Okay, great. Thank you for joining, everyone. Hopefully everyone's had a really good first day of hacking, whether you've been going at it all day or whether you've just started. I think it's been very productive based on the amount of messages going backwards and forwards on Slack. It's been very busy. I personally haven't touched a keyboard when it comes to actual code. You guys have been keeping me busy just chatting, which is great. It's a very good sign, lots of activity. And pull requests starting to pour in already, which is what we like to see. So the event we're going to have now is just a quick wrap up. We're going to go through the different leaders for the different project groups to kind of summarize what you guys have been working on, just so everyone is kind of aware of the big picture of how things are progressing. So a quick wrap up, and then we'll get on to it. And for those of you who are in different time zones or have time to keep working, when this is not the end of a hackathon, you can carry on coding now. Keep adding your stuff to HackMD, keep talking on Slack, and you might choose to use this as your check-in instead of your checkout. And then we'll try to go over the notes tomorrow morning when those of us in Europe are getting started again on day 2, and we'll see what you've done in the meantime. Right, so first group, let's see who's ready to talk. Maybe we can talk about pipelines. Stella, if you're there.
Yes, thanks. I'll talk about the progress in pipelines. It's been a very diverse group and a lot of people contributing on different pipelines, so very successful so far. In the pipelines group, there have been mostly people contributing to existing pipelines. One team also was creating a new pipeline, and also people working on pipeline maintenance, like template updates, the different pipelines. So for a start, there has been some achievements on Sarek 3.0. Mainly Maxim was working on a pull request, and many people were working on adding DSL2 modules for the DSL2 version of Sarek. For the single-cell RNA-seq pipeline, Sangram and Alex updated the JSON schema and opened a PR with the latest template, and I was reviewing it. So let's hope we can merge it soon. For HLA typing, Alex was working on the JSON schema for it, and also started working on OptiType modules for the conversion of HLA typing to DSL2. Regarding MithelSeq, Patrick was adding some missing modules to the NFCom modules repository that are required for porting to DSL2, mostly related to Bismarck. And he also started bringing the DSL2 draft into shape to port the pipeline to DSL2. Then we have some contribution to the Pangenome pipeline, mainly by Simon, and he was also updating the template to the newest version, and solved a couple of issues for this pipeline, as well as updated the Nextflow schema. For AmpliSec, there were different people collaborating today on the AmpliSec pipeline, Daniel Straub and Daniel Lundin, and I think Emily as well. So they created a new branch for DSL2, and they've been working on porting the pipeline to DSL2. And they have also added some data to tool for the downstream analysis of AmpliSec, and working on that the pipeline is more flexible and user-friendly with using different taxonomic databases. For the back-to-map pipeline, there were also several collaborators today working together. Here summarized, Avan Tonder worked on a new Gubbins module and a new SNP sites module. For Bissell Magic, I myself was working on updating the template to the newest tools, and Susanna was working also in adding working on some modules that will be later added also to Bissell Magic for the porting Bissell Magic to DSL2. For Eager pipeline, I think mostly Alex was working on it to add requested for functionality to the PDM tools process. For the MAC pipeline, Sabrina was working on finishing the first DSL2 version draft and waiting for tests to pass and for reviews, I guess, here. The DR proteomics and MHC-Quan pipelines. I think Leon was working on porting them to the latest template version. They're the pull requests, and there are a couple of bugs that remain after merging. And finally, there was some work on a new pipeline, CRISPR Quant. So we're quite excited to see what this pipeline growing. And there has been a template update for this pipeline and integrated functionality to generate FASTA file from the library CSV file. So lots of contributions on the pipeline team. It's great to see that, and also several people contributing for different pipelines.
Nice, Alex.
Yep, I'm going to share quickly because that works quite well actually. Okay, we worked on documentation. So the documentation team did a couple of things, mostly related to both the web page and NF-core tools, but partially this was more for the JSON schema stuff. So several pipelines had this parameter documentation conversion still open for them. So that's something that a lot of people were actually focusing on. James, for example, worked on the NF-core configs, but I'm going to show that with the individual ones. So for the HLA typing, we have now updated the JSON schema. Sangram was working on the same for the single-cell RNA-seq pipeline now, so that should also have, once the PR is merged in, a fully functional JSON schema plus the newest template. Tour was working on the method-seq pipeline, however, found out while doing that the dev branch already contained one. However, Patrick was actually commenting recently, as I saw it right now, that this was actually better than what was already done on the method-seq dev branch, if I remember correctly. So there's probably going to be one merge between both of these changes. Anka was working on some extension of the introduction documentation. James added a new tutorial section to the NF-core website, which is now available under usage and developers and will be extended in the future. So multiple people already asked for something like that we have something where we can actually have this properly set up, that newcomers or new developers can check some documentation there on how to do certain things in a step-by-step tutorial. James, for example, already works on a step-by-step tutorial for institutional profiles, since he's been doing that quite a bunch of times now for the Eagle pipeline. Renuka, Chunho Lee, and Johannes, sorry if I'm not perfectly pronouncing everything correctly, started working on transcribing the NF-core bite-sized talks. So both the YouTube version and I think also working on some kind of transcription that can be shared as text, which is a bit easy for people to catch up without actually having to watch the entire video. However, that, as we all knew already, will be quite time-consuming. And Hanka also added some additional docs for Singularity, which was an open issue in the documentation. So we actually, she had already worked on that as well. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Nice, thank you very much. I'll just find the right one to share. So yeah, we were heading up in the framework tools project, which I think was the quietest one today. I sat in a ginger meeting this morning all by myself for quite a while, feeling very lonely, but it was good because I was plenty busy doing other stuff, and we had people dropping in and out at various times. Probably the busiest amongst us actually working on framework issues was Matthias, who was working on the website here. Sorry for screaming in the background, doing some great work with the website. So a lot of what we do at the moment is pulling statistics and things from GitHub API and other places and saving them in static JSON files, which was a kind of quick and dirty way to do it when I first wrote this code a long time ago, and is starting to kind of struggle under the weight of the amount of data we have in those files now. So he's added support to have a SQL database in the background for the website, and starting to port over some of the code for all those kind of statistics and graphs and stuff into that database instead, which is much more future-proof. We had a really nice meeting. Nathan from the States managed to join us, which is great, who's the author of PEP, Portable Encapsulated. Oh, I've lost the last P. We're thinking about using this as its own format based around an own tool sets based around JSON schema. And the idea is it's kind of a standardized way to define sample sheets for pipelines, and should be transferable between pipelines and between, so you can kind of set your PEP up for your RNA-seq data and then run like a bunch of different RNA pipelines, Nextflow, CWL, SnakeMake, whatever. All without having to do too much to your input sample sheets. And it's also standardized, and it's got lots of tooling built around it, so we can do things like validation. So it's a very similar idea to what we've been working with the JSON schema for the pipeline level, but this is sample level. So we've been talking about how best to kind of proceed with that, and we think we're going to basically got a way forward, and we're going to start testing the RNA pipeline with that. Basically, as a starting point, we'll just try and replace the current pipeline Python script which validates the inputs. The other thing we've been doing is just collecting lots of bugs, which is why I've been very busy chatting to people. So we now have a milestone for NF Core tools for another patch hotfix release 13.2. And these are like the high priority bugs that people have reported in the last few hours. So some things here that people have had problems with NF Core create. And things like this. So we're going to try and tidy those up. Most of them are quite minor bugs, I hope. So we'll try and finish those up and get a patch release out very soon. So you guys can carry on working. So that's just planning stage, really. It was a couple of things wrapped up. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the framework. Right. Harshal, are you there?
Yeah, hello?
You're live.
I am. Okay. So yeah, it's been very productive, I think, on the DSL2 modules front as well. A lot of people getting up to scratch with how things work conceptually, and also playing around with NF Core tools. The testing and all of that type of stuff, which maybe isn't the most trivial to get your head around. So quite a few questions around there, but I'm hoping most of it kind of now makes sense. So we've had a couple of video calls just discussing content, any help, optional arguments, and a bunch of other stuff. And yeah, I think everyone's sort of on the same page now. So I'm expecting at least 200 or 300 modules over the next couple of days. No pressure. So we've added, there's been a lot of new module additions. I think Florian was working on this, and with, I forget the name now, but I know he's from Denmark. So yeah, Florian was working on this, some tests. This was one of the tricky examples where, for example, when you generate MD5 sums for this particular module, the outputs that the module produces, that had a bit of a play with PyTest to look for other file contents as opposed to using a physical MD5 sum for this. So this, I believe, is almost there now. Robert added Procker and VCF tool. SAMTools merge was added by Yukiwa. And she also, I believe, added this one as well, bed to big bed. Freebase, I lost track of that one. FGBio was added by Francesco. Mike ran into an issue with Docker username settings that we generally provide via the NF Core pipeline template when using Docker. So that seemed to cause an issue for him because his username, I believe, wasn't set on his system, and so Nextflow was failing with that and not happy. And I think we'll probably have to look into this a bit more because it's a generic setting for all NF Core pipelines at the moment. And we also have that on the NF Core modules repo and the Nextflow config we use for all the tests. So I think we need to have a look at that. We have a new entry coming in as we speak, and I believe that is Maxime Bory sneaking in his late addition to the docs. So he's added now the adapter removal module, Unicycler. I think this was Jose that added that, maybe for the Vira recon pipeline, which is now almost all of the modules have been added for that. Rike, Kevin, myself, Francesca and Maxime, I believe, have been having discussions about generating a small, tiny test data set for human data, which would be quite nice to have, and some modules will require it at some point anyway. The idea of actually writing a separate end-to-end type workflow that could generate all of these intermediate files by chaining together a bunch of modules was also thrown around. It just means that you know, for example, if you need to change a test file for some reason, I mean, we had one earlier where our BAM files for the SARS-CoV-2 data don't have read groups, and one tool requires read groups. And so instead of regenerating all of the data from scratch, you could possibly imagine having a workflow that is just chaining together modules, generating all of these intermediate files that you can then use as test data with minor changes. Yeah, we also discussed the possibility of using custom scripts in modules. So at the moment, NF Core modules only hosts official tool type modules, so for FastQC, SAMtools, etc. But there's no reason why we can't also host custom modules on there. The only thing that we'd really need to think about are trying to install things wherever they're required within the pipeline repository. So one example of that would be the get software versions Python script that we use in most NF Core pipelines. We could have a modules custom type directory that has a get software versions directory, and in that a bin or something, along with the main script that we can then install via NF Core tools directly into the pipeline repository. The only problem with that really is that you could have name clashes between scripts and stuff, although very unlikely. And ideally, that functionality would hope we could somehow get via Nextflow, but there are other complications with that as well, because you'd have to add a ton of bin directory paths to $path in the environment to be able to export these scripts and stuff. So it needs to be thought about a little bit more. And Gregor created an issue and for discussion around that and stuff. So yeah, it's been quite an active day. Thank you everyone for you know, getting involved and doing all of this. And yeah, I think that's me.
Great stuff. Yeah. Oops. So you could just stop sharing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Great stuff. That's it for today. Thank you, everybody. Carry on if you still have time in your workday left. Go home and beer o'clock if you've finished your day. I think remember that all of the HackMD links that we've just been going through are up on the website and also in the Slack channels. So if you want to recap or didn't catch anything we were just talking about, go and have a read. Also, please keep adding to them if you're still working or if you're reading this later on. We're going to come back to them and go over them again tomorrow. So brilliant to see you all, and been really fun already for the first day. So let's try and keep this momentum up into the rest of the week.